Despite the overwhelming scientific evidence that COVID-19 could not have evolved in nature and, therefore, must have been created in a laboratory, it came as no surprise that U.S. intelligence agencies released an inconclusive report about its origin. Joe Hoft, Gateway Pundit. It should come as no surprise that America's intelligence agencies are clueless, because these agencies recruit their analysts and managers from America's colleges and universities. As institutions go, our colleges and universities specialize in cluelessness. A university degree is, in fact, training in how not to see. Why has this happened? The essential thing has gone out of the entire system of higher education, wrote Friedrich Nietzsche in 1888. How did it happen? A political ideal, Nietzsche explained, has been substituted for intellectual cultivation. Today's universities, like the German universities in Nietzsche's day, are about a brutal breaking in with the aim of making, in the least possible time, numberless young men fit to be utilized. What will they be utilized for? Under the present regime, to save the alleged victims of inequality, racism, and sexism. This is the service to which young women and minorities are dedicated. To hell with young white males. Nietzsche further stated that higher education was no longer a privilege and that schools are one and all adjusted, as regards their teachers, curricula, and their instructional aims, to the most dubious mediocrity. This, of course, is disastrous for the life of the mind. It is also disastrous for any endeavor which requires a high degree of intelligence, keen judgment, and real knowledge. How does all this play out in practice? Your typical university graduate today has been given erroneous theories to parrot theories that appeal to insecure people who should have never entered a university. These theories depict capitalism as a parade of predatory villains and America as oppressive and evil, e.g., just read Noam Chomsky. The left-indoctrinated individual of today believes in the wickedness of patriarchy, heterosexual norms, and white skin. Yet they are clueless regarding foreign enemies like the Chinese communists, North Koreans, or the Russians. All of this carries over to our intelligence community, which is made up of university graduates. The left-educated intelligence analyst has a blind spot when it comes to enemies who are infiltrating our institutions and weakening our defenses from the left. They do not want to see China as a hostile power. Better to cast doubt on the theory that totalitarian states are militarily aggressive. Better to say that capitalism is responsible for militarism. Therefore, when called upon to trace the origins of the COVID-19 virus, U.S. intelligence is not inclined to say the virus was intentionally created as a weapon by the People's Liberation Army. It does not matter that the evidence is quite clear. The intelligence community is made up of people who do not have clarity and do not want to blame Communist China. That is why this same intelligence community believed false testimony from Igor Danchenko, now charged with lying to the FBI to the effect that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. As yesterday's headline in the New York Post had it, Durham's indictment is bad news for mainstream media on Steele dossier reporting. Indeed, the mainstream media is cut from the same cloth as the intelligence community. So, there is a fundamental disconnect at work. Our own intelligence community is inclined to a perverted analysis. And here we are, locked into the same country as these unwitting dummies who believe the communist lies, or the Russian lies, or the Chinese lies, or Igor Danchenko's lies. And here they are, once again, flat wrong. But there will be no contrition. These are functional imbeciles whose native intelligence might have been rather high at one time. But if your brain has been twisted into a politically appropriate shape, a lobotomy by any other name is still vacant-eyed and drooling. And by the way, we must reject the idea these people are liberals because leftists do not value freedom above equality. Therefore, there is nothing liberal about them. They are levelers and reflect that which attends leveling, i.e., tyranny. It is a fact that conservatives and non-leftists of every stripe have been aging out of management positions across the intelligence community. I once spoke to a fellow who was high up in a domestic intelligence agency. A few years ago, he complained that his boss was a Marxist, so he quit. Each time this happens, and it has been ongoing for years, the institutions turn a redder shade of pink. All institutions in the country are therefore succumbing to the new religion of socialism. The whole country, in fact, has been moving to the left for decades. This has been scientifically proven by Professor Tim Grosclose in a book titled Left Turn: how liberal media bias distorts the American mind. We are presently witnessing a gradual process of transformation. Some might say our civilization is disintegrating. Thinkers from the 19th century, like Nietzsche, would say that the disintegration began a long time ago. We are now witnessing the catastrophic end of a long-term decline. Once again, it is an intellectual process involving the life of the mind. The transformation takes place in the arena of ideas. Since our educational system is defective, the human beings that pass through the system increasingly partake of those defects. Nietzsche said that education consists in three things. One has to learn to see, one has to learn to think, one has to learn to speak and write. The end in all three is a noble culture. Without this noble culture, there is only a parade of absurd ideas passing in and out of fashion. Without this noble culture, there is nothing classic, nothing humanizing, nothing truly rational. Furthermore, an intelligence community staffed from a failed non-noble intellectual culture is going to be its own very special kind of clown show. Those who do know how to see, think, and speak will not be welcome in agencies so constituted. Neither will the truly intelligent want anything to do with such agencies. For a clown belongs in a circus while a serious person goes his own way. Furthermore, if a clown show extends from the intelligence community to the military, as demonstrated by Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer's book, then you know the circus has really come to town. The university was critical in the conversion of all other institutions to the socialist path. To be sure, we lost our intellectual culture through a gradual process. The continued decline of our intellectual culture has been noted by many observers since Nietzsche. The study of classic literature, complained Jacques Barzun, has been reduced to a purely technical endeavor. One studies poetry and fiction or art and music not to receive and enjoy a message, but to apply one or another complicated method, a method through which feeling and pleasure and meditation are pretty well excluded. Bad analysis typically arises out of erroneous methods, usually pedantic and often beside the point. The object of inquiry is misunderstood from the outset, mishandled and inverted. The entire procedure is designed by the ignorant to impress the ignorant. The intelligence bureaucrat may have sophisticated-sounding methods, but he cannot arrive at a true understanding of anything. His methods are contrary to purpose. Thus, America has massive and expensive intelligence machinery, but it is entirely dysfunctional. According to the most detailed public disclosure of American intelligence spending in history, obtained by the Washington Post from Edward Snowden, the intelligence community requested $52.6 billion for 2013. And yet, the intelligence community cannot properly identify its enemies, cannot provide timely information on real threats like COVID-19, and cannot even admit that COVID-19 was made in a lab. The problem, of course, is that these agencies are full of miseducated, misguided, imbecilic bureaucrats who are disinclined to learn anything. As they are already paid experts, there is nothing for them to do except bungle. America's 16 intelligence agencies employ around 107,000 people. How many of the analytic geniuses within these agencies have noticed the worldwide advance of communism around the globe? In sub-Saharan Africa, South America, Nepal, and Portland, Oregon? Perhaps the ones who noticed are working as night janitors somewhere, having lost their careers. The institutions themselves cannot notice. A specific ideological flavor predominates. Therefore, the intelligence failures must continue. It is interesting to read the words of the late James Angleton, who was the infamous head of the CIA counterintelligence staff from 1954 to 1974. According to Joseph Trento, Angleton made a series of statements near the end of his life. These statements explained, in a nutshell, what had happened to the CIA and American intelligence from the early 1950s on. Shortly before his death from lung cancer in May 1987, Angleton told Trento, "I realize how I have wasted my existence, my professional life. I was always the skunk at the garden party, and even your friends tire of that." Angleton was full of regrets. He had been warning that the KBG was winning the Cold War. "You know how I got to be in charge of counterintelligence?" Angleton asked Trento. "I agreed not to polygraph or require detailed background checks on Allen Dulles and 60 of his closest friends. They were afraid that their own dealings with Hitler's pals would come out. They were too arrogant to believe that the Russians would discover it all. Yet the actual situation of the CIA, before the advent of Dulles' leadership, was much worse and is worth relating. In 1952, the head of the CIA, General Walter Bedell Smith, was suspected by the FBI of being a Soviet agent. He was talked into resigning from CIA by President-elect Eisenhower in January 1953. Smith's replacement at CIA was Allen Dulles, who had worked for U.S. intelligence in Switzerland during World War II and became entangled with a certain SS general. Angleton concluded, there was no accountability. And without real accountability, everything turned to shit. Angleton then reflected on the consequences of the agency's lack of integrity. You know, the CIA got tens of thousands of brave people killed. We played with lives as if we owned them. We gave false hope. I so misjudged what happened. When asked what went wrong, Angleton returned to the theme of the rottenness of the CIA leadership cadre under Dulles. Fundamentally, the founding fathers of U.S. intelligence were liars. The better you lied, the more you betrayed, the more likely you would be promoted. These people attracted and promoted each other. Outside of their duplicity, the only thing they had in common was a desire for absolute power. Angleton concluded, I am fundamentally a failure. I failed to protect the CIA because there was no real desire to secure the place from the Soviets. I never understood the great advantage the Russians had over us. As Americans, we just hold no real value in secrecy. God, it was such a simple explanation. Aside from the moral failing which attends all, there has been an intelligence failure. Yet there has also been a failure of intelligence.